is our first interview in a series, can you just go through the steps of matrix?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very good idea, Karin. So, again, it's nothing that's simplified a little. So, you're with your client. You've got your specific memory that you've accessed whichever way, echo to echo, or following the energy, or they just have a memory to start with. But let's look. We've got the memory.
Yep.
So, first of all, we need to know very briefly what's happened in that memory. And we don't want a long dialogue because they're going to start to get tuned in. We don't want to be tapping at this point because we don't want the tapping to bring that memory in, where they start to re-experience it too much, as in EFT. So it's just like a sentence like, I was at school and the teacher shouted at me in front of the class. Okay, so we know what it is. That's all we need. Okay, so let's get a strategy.
I think that's important because when running into in my classes, because most of them obviously are EFTers, they want to tap their faces off before they get into the matrix, and so they want to tell the whole story. So I think that's important to reiterate that.
Because absolutely, because we know what EFT does when you start tapping is it tunes people in. You've got these memories in our fields, as we understand in Matrix, and the tapping actually starts to bring the energy in. So they're going to start getting associated to the echo. So that's going to end up difficult. So we want to keep that dissociation. So that quick description, and then now we know what we're dealing with. Okay, what do we do when we go in there? So let's get a little strategy together. Okay, we'll go in there. We'll maybe freeze all the other students. We'll freeze the teacher, and let's get tapping on that echo first of all. Another little analogy I always use is always tap on the echo first of all. Like when you're on a plane and the mask come down, as they say, you put your own mask on first before you work with other people, and always the same with an echo. No matter what's happening, we can freeze everybody else. We can deal with them later if need be, but tap on the echo once the echo is de-traumatized, and then the next thing we're going to say is what's the belief decision they made. And this is whether it's big T or little t traumas. What's the belief decision, and then from that point we know exactly what we need to create. Okay, but anyway, you're backing up a little bit. The steps are, we've got the understanding, we've got a strategy, and we're going to go straight in there. Now, before we was talking about, introduce yourself to the echo and tell them why you're there and who you are, and, they're traumatized, they're not listening. Yeah, well, if you have somebody that's traumatized in front of you and you just talk to them, they're just like, just a glazed expression, they're in trauma. So what we need to do is just take them by surprise, the echo, just get tapping on them as soon as possible. To get rid of that trauma. And also I found by doing this, in the olden days with Matrix, some echoes would be resistant. They would wander off. They would hide in cupboards. So all of a sudden you got all this communication and they're like, oh, they've disappeared. They're under the bed. They're in the cupboard. So, if you just get in there as quick as possible, first focus. How quickly can I tap on that echo to get rid of the trauma? Okay. So, and also with the setup statement. Now in EFT, I think certainly many of the trainers in the UK, we have our, even though I feel this big red, orange ball of anger in my stomach when I look at what the teacher did to me that day, I love and accept myself. That's your EFT statement. It's different with Matrix. The echoes are tuned in.
Already.
The whole point of the setup statement was really about tuning in. Overcome reversal and tuned in. Well, they tend not to be reversed. There's no reason for keeping the problem. Going back to when they first developed these strategies. So they're not reversed, and they're definitely tuned in. They've been tuned in for a long time, just waiting for users to come and help them. So let's get in there, and it's a simple setup. And in fact, I've come to a belief that you almost don't need a setup because they're tuned in. But it's very brief, even though you're feeling really bad. You're a good girl, you're a good boy, and you talk to them as you would a person in that situation. Okay, so as you're going through the points, it's like you're a good child. It's okay. I'm here to help you. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to, you can just talk to them and tap because they're tuned in, and the trauma's going to start to get released, and they're going to start to be able to move through that trauma. So keep the language simple. Keep it as you would, age relevant to the person you're with. If it's a 3-year-old or if it's a baby, talk to them that way, with gentleness, with love, with kindness, with the feeling of security. You've frozen everything else that's going on around them, so they feel safe. That's the first thing we do. Then, as I said, what's the belief decision you made that day? Okay, I'm stupid in this example. Okay, so what do we need to do? So we can have the echo somewhere safe. They're traumatised now. Let's tap on the teacher. And the teacher's like, had a bad day and they were frustrated in the class. They couldn't control the class and it was making them feel they weren't a good teacher, blah, 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 blah. And as I said before, once you tap on the teacher, it's like their higher self is there and they'll explain these things. And you say, like, well, you made this, little me feel it was stupid. Oh, no, I never thought she was stupid. She's a really clever girl. It's actually, I thought she was clever, and I picked on her because she's one of the cleverer people, and whatever the teacher says. But then we can have that once we've cleared the teacher's trauma around this, because of course everybody else is traumatized in these memories as well. They're stuck in their own echoes. That tapping allows that teacher then can bring the child, and the teacher might say to the child, "No, you're a clever girl. You're doing really well. I'm sorry I shouted at you." And then if you're working with, in this case, say like a long-term belief of I'm stupid, where this person's run it for 357 memories of being I'm stupid, just getting the understanding, and I understand what you talk about this, that the understanding's so important, and absolutely it is. And I think with these entrenched beliefs with very strong feels, because we repeated them so often, just to get the understanding is not enough. We need to have pictures that say I am clever, if this is the belief in this case, so that we then look at going others to other echoes, echo to echo, to get many echoes that know these pictures and their meaning is I am clever, I can do it, or whatever we need to change. So that's how it's changed a little bit with the steps, the basic matrix steps about how we get in there. Don't mess about, not a long conversation, just get in there, get tapping, see what the belief is, and then let's start to look at changing these beliefs.
So can you then let's talk a little bit of a recap of what you can and can't change?
Okay, general rule. We talked about all the big T traumas, the abuse, the rape, the accidents, the deaths and such. Okay, these things happen, we can't change them, we can't deny it. If you go in beforehand, if you go in the middle, then we're going to get to denial because you're going to try to change it. Okay, as I said, the important thing is the trauma, the echo experienced, and the beliefs made. So in this situation, these tend to be one-off events. You don't have a car crash every day. You don't have 3,500 car crashes. It might be one or two events. It's more about the trauma itself in these situations. So here we go afterwards. Okay, tap on the echo, just the same, get rid of the trauma. We can see what the belief is. So as an example, if we're looking at, say, sexual abuse. So we've gone to the little girl afterwards. She's all on her own, feeling, in pain and sad, and we've got all the energy. So we can tap on that to resolve that negative energy that the echo is feeling. And then what's the belief decision? Now, if it's powerlessness, then we can look at, okay, what can we do now? Like an example, there was a woman I worked with late last year. She'd gone in the first time to work with a memory of being sexually abused by a next door neighbour. The first time when it was all about the trauma. And she did some standard EFT on this, and a lot of the trauma was resolved. When we went back in the second time, she realised that she wanted to go and confront the attacker because of the belief that she'd made about how she could never be with anybody, and it changed the relationships for her whole life. There was a lot of beliefs going on there. So the echo was fine. So we left the echo in a safe place. She went to talk to the perpetrator. Now, again, we tap on the perpetrator. We're not trying to fix them. We're just trying to get that self there. And she communicates with the perpetrator. He apologises. He said, I'm so sorry for what I did. I've regretted it, every day from the rest of my life. I regret what happens. I go to prison for 2 years. I was abused as a child myself, and I just couldn't stop myself. And I'm so sorry. And what happened with the understanding of this, and when she came out of the matrix, said, what, the result of the trauma of the event was important, but I can forgive this guy now. Deep subconscious forgiveness, and
that happens on its own. We don't as practitioners push that always happens on its own.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I love about this work. So much forgiveness is important, But the fact that, and you don't try to get forgive at the beginning of the session, but once you get the understanding, the meaning, the life lessons, and the forgiveness is natural and easy. You see how all these events are connected, and it's part of your journey through life, and how we've attracted and created, and
And I wanted to say something about that because it's important. Even if your mind, if you cognitively think that you've forgiven, and like you said before, doing all that work, and I've done all this work to forgive him, or her, or whatever it is, and that's your head. Matrix, when you use Matrix, the forgiving is energetic as well. So it's true forgiveness.
And Paul is subconscious.
Yeah.
As Bruce Lipton says, 99% of everything that you're running on a day is subconscious. Up to 99% of all your habits, behaviors, attitudes, everything you do is run by the subconscious. So, that's where we're changing it in the subconscious. Otherwise, you'll just keep running the same patterns over and over again. And that's, again, what Matrix allows us to do. And having that balance with Matrix between, the completion of memories, working with the right side of the brain, as we talked about before, with that creativity to allow this completion, but also then keeping it real when possible and logical. The logical mind is also we're bringing that to the equation that wasn't there when we were originally traumatized. That part of the brain shuts down during trauma. So we're bringing the left and right brain in there, and just subconsciously and consciously seeing that this event is changed now. The perception is different.
So Can you bring that into some specific issues like phobias?
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about with these big T traumas about going afterwards. So an example I just give you. So let's look at phobias. Now, I was talking about, to me, the nuance with phobias is it's just the client's coming because they're afraid of something. So an example with Megan, my own daughter, she developed a fear of spiders, and we tapped it a little bit over the years, and it kind of abated a little bit. But then it came up last year in the UK. There were these spiders around that called these false Twitter spiders. When they bit you, your leg fell off, and you have like your rotting flesh. And it was one of these kind of urban legend things. But she actually had some of these spiders that nestled right in a window throughout the summer. So she couldn't open her windows, and then she was in a friend's garage one day, and there was lots of spiders when she turned the light on. So as these things, this globalization, now the fear of spiders had escalated off the scale. So we went back to a memory, and interesting, I could see why this one was hard to clear. And I don't want to go too much into phobias, but we can have phobias because of a direct experience, as in you were afraid of a dog, so a dog jumped up at you as a child. We can be afraid of spiders, for example, because as a child we saw mum, a spider on the wall, and she's screaming. And it's like the child's thinking, "Oh, that must be dangerous. Look at the state of mum." We can see things on television like Jaws. How many people are afraid of being in the sea because of sharks? Mm-hmm. Especially if you've been. There's been a few in the US this week, hasn't there? Anyway, so basically, we're just afraid of something. So at times we can just go to these direct experiences and tap and clear it, but also there can be beliefs involved, and there's always a belief, but at times we have to get to the belief. And the reason why we just with EFT, I've not cleared this with Megan, it went back, we followed the energy, we went echo to echo, to a memory where she was there as a little girl, and she'd got in trouble, and there was the person looking after them that day with my daughter and my son. They sent her to her room, shouted at her, and she was in a room feeling really sad and really lonely, and she's reading this book and feeling all these horrible feelings of loneliness and anger, and a spider ran across the book. Now, it wasn't so much, it wasn't a traumatic event with the spider running across the book, but it shocked her a little bit. But the subconscious picks up all that and all the meanings of all the other things that's going on about, it's all my fault and nobody loves me, and all the beliefs that she was running that day. So, what we did in this memory, it ended up that the spider, we had a big happy smiley face, it had boots on, she was stroking it, and it was a friend and was listening to her and understood her. Now, this is not rooted in reality, but it doesn't matter. What we're trying to achieve here, just that she's not afraid of spiders anymore. And actually, this really cleared it. Just a few weeks ago, I was in the kitchen with her, and it's coming to summer in the UK. There was a great big house spider, and I said, "Oh, look at the spider." She went, "No, whatever," and just carried on talking. I mean, just no reaction at all. But we needed to get back there and really see where it went back to. So, but the nuance with phobias is just around, just make it fun. It doesn't matter if it's rooted in reality. There's skills, let's say like public speaking we talked about. Again, the practitioner's got to be logical. There was an example, there was a German lady that had been on a course. And a few months after the course, she wrote me this case study about her son, who she'd done some matrix on. Now, her son loved tennis. And he did a lot of competitions, but he was never winning. After she did this session on him, he was winning all the time. Until one particular match, he played somebody, and this guy was just way too much better than him. I mean, he just sometimes, like if you're playing Nadal or Federer or, Murray, they're just too good. No matter how much you try, they're just too good. And what's interesting with this is after that, he was physically sick because he could not stomach the idea of losing anymore. So she actually suggested she went back to him and just looked at the beliefs and just change it a little bit. That you don't want to create it so that you can't lose, because then that becomes again irrational. And I know you've got a good example of this where just with skills like this, just think about it logically. Like public speaking, if we can get somebody up there doing public speaking and it goes incredibly well, that's going to help them get over that fear of public speaking. But then in some other skill situations, if we make it illogical, because like we might have created memories where the echo won all the time, then that can change the subconscious that if you can't win all the time, then that creates another problem. So just keep it logical there.
Yeah. So Karl, this is where sometimes students go into this gray area because they're like, I want to know exactly when I can and can't. And it's not. Ann Adams says people are simple. Matrix reimprinting is simple. People are not, right? And so it's gonna, unfortunately and fortunately, be different with each person because their belief
Absolutely.
is different. And so you can't say, well, no, if he was spanked, you can't make, in this case you don't spank, in this case you do, because the person in front of you is going to be different. So it is a gray area, and that's why you go to courses and learn and practice and watch demos and things like that, so that you start to get an idea.
And with experience, you just get better at our suggestions, how we help our clients and what we suggest, as potentials here, and what we kind of move them away from because it's illogical and it's wrong because we're in denial of say like use the example before about say an abortion where the client says, the echo says, I don't have I keep the baby. Well, you've got to change that with them. Even if you come out of the matrix and said, no, that's not rational, is it? You can make mistakes. You can have 10 different practitioners, 10 matrix practitioners with the same client, and each one of them would have led that session in a slightly different way.
Just a little bit different, right?
But it doesn't matter. What you're looking at, resolve the trauma, change the belief.
Exactly.
And if it's a little bit different, this is my creation matrix. I've been doing it a long time. I'll tell you how many times I see newbies on my courses do sessions and stand there in the background watching them and listening to them. I think, God, they're better than me already, and it's only day 3. It's just I say about it's not about being a practitioner. It's about being out of the way, as Gary always said. Get yourself out of the way, and it's not about being this amazing practitioner with all the answers. It's about going there, just be a human being with understanding, caring, and how you can work together as a team with you and your client as a team to help that echo resolve its trauma, change the belief. That's what we're looking at.
That right there is matrix reimprinting. That's
Absolutely.
right. That right there, what you just said in that one sentence, is matrix reimprinting. And if people want to, I get students, people want to do it right. Do it like that, like what you just said. And
it's not about you. It's not about the practitioner. It's about the client and the echo. You just facilitate the process. Example of a bad session. I was working with a young boy. He's 15. He came on a course with his father. It was a demo. It was pain. He had pain in his shoulders. and we found an echo. So he's only a 15-year-old boy, and it's something that happened when he was 13. So I said, okay, like, step into the matrix and introduce yourself and blah blah blah. What's happened? He said, oh, I just kicked my echo. He was being stupid, so I just went in there and kicked him. So, like, I think we might need to come out. So, like, okay, so what you just did, do you think that's, would you like to be treated like that? Why would you treat your echo like that? And he said, yeah, you're right. I was just going through a crappy time, and I just thought he was being stupid. How about go in this time, go in as a friend, go in somebody that understands him, somebody that's there to help him. So we went back into the memory and tapped and completely redid it. And he came out and he said, oh my God, the pain in my shoulders has just gone. I just don't believe that. And he was like, well, the first time he went in, he did something, really silly. But
well, yeah, I mean, I did. I had one too. With somebody. She walks in and on her wedding day, and she says, "Don't marry the bastard because he's a jerk." And I'm like, "Come out of the come back out of the matrix." So, I mean, we do have to pre-frame our clients that be not to make them anything, because you can't. It won't work. It won't work if you go in there and hurt them, hit them, try to tell them what to do. It's not going to work. And that's what experience brings.
Absolutely. And so you just get better and better. And just as you said, watch people, watch the sessions we have within the Matrix Imprinting site that, therefore, that's the reason we film those sessions and we put them in there, and why it's so important that our practitioners, go through these videos to see a selection of, some of our top practitioners around the world, how they work differently. They all work slightly differently. I'm sure, without doubt, you work differently than I do, Karin. But it doesn't matter. They'll all be different. And don't think you need years and years of experience before you become good at this. Just be there with
inherent in the steps in matrix re-imprinting, inherent into the process is. It all works out. You don't have, like an EFT, you have to learn and learn and learn and get better and better and better at it to really be good at. With Matrix, so, like you said, it's the third day and they're like, oh, wow, wow.
I mean, I have to do demos all the time, obviously, on my courses. And what I do, I just go into a zone. I go into my heart. I do a little bit of heart math breathing, and I'm just completely zoned out. And I'm just there with the client, and I'm just listening and just helping when I need to, staying out of it when I need to. And it just becomes easy then, and very enjoyable, of course. I mean, this is great work. So I just want to cover one last little area. We talked about small T beliefs, small T traumas, and the beliefs that result from those. Now, this is an area to me where we're really looking at this completion idea. And this, what's the expression that...
Creative completion or imaginative completion, depends on who's
I kind of like the idea of subconscious completion, because we are stuck in that memory. In that moment we froze, we made a decision. So some of the belief systems that people have, and this is what I've seen in the EFT world, that a lot of people have done a lot of work, but their beliefs are not changing. They're still in the same old beliefs, because yes, you resolve the trauma, but the echo, still in that same situation, still with the same perception. So, some of the beliefs like I'm not good enough, or the world's dangerous, I'm unlovable, I've got to be in control all the time, I'm responsible for people, on and on and on. We can attract, once we've developed these beliefs from childhood, in that pre-6 area, we can keep doing it over and over again, attracting, creating, looking for proof of, reacting, and it gets worse and worse. We get this globalization effect. These problems get bigger and bigger, and the subconscious creates more and more stress, so we keep doing all these things more and more. Now, just go into some memories in childhood, even if you get back to birth and you get back to pre-6 memories, changing those and understanding the belief around this and why you made these decisions. Great, it's important to get that understanding. But if you've got these hundreds and hundreds of memories that are all reinforcing your subconscious belief, just getting the understanding, to me, is not enough. To me, we need to go to, whether it's 10, 15, 20, 25 memories. In the new book with Diana's story, she went to something like 25, 30 memories on her one belief of, when things are going well, I will screw it up for everybody else. Now, she's a completely different woman these days. It's affected every area of her life. But so did the negative belief. And it took a lot of memories, and bit by bit, it's not all or nothing with these changes. See what you attract and what you create and how you react becomes different, but it is a process. And until people realize, especially business themselves, because clients invariably don't come to see you saying, "I've got a belief that I'm that I'm responsible for everything." Say they don't come with that; they come with the outcome of the belief. The pain of the responsibility in the shoulders, or or the anxiety they feel because they're constant. They come with the problem, not the belief. But the understanding that I talk about at times, like say with Megan example, what seems like it should be a simple phobia was actually more complicated than it appears. And that's what Matrix gives us, this ability to go further and further down the rabbit hole and really get to these beliefs, because a lot of the times we need to. So you could work with somebody, say, with relationship problems, and you're going to be going down the rabbit hole a lot about, if they feel they're unlovable, they're not worthy of love. Now, you are getting to the beliefs very quickly here, as in you're going to have to get into the beliefs, and there's a lot of work to do there. But the point being, we need to go to lots of memories and really go in there, resolve that trauma. We know what the belief is. Okay, now let's change that to the opposite. I'm unlovable.
Yeah, I was talking to, actually introducing matrix reimprinting to David Feinstein, and he says, well, it sounds like psychological extinction, which is, you believe this, right? As you clear all these other things, that belief becomes extinct, and the opposite becomes true. So you have to, Gary Craig's generalization effect kind of thing. So you do need
absolutely, yeah. And a term I used to use a lot, like critical mass, getting to that. You might stop with the belief 100%, and as you start to change, it comes down and down and down. And then also, as you start to change your perception and the energy you're putting out there, what you attract, the law of attraction is going to change. If it's unlovable, instead of seeing that everywhere and attracting people around you that reinforce that belief of unlovable, these people will fall away, and you'll have new people in your life where think, oh, these people quite like me, and actually I'm quite liking myself a bit more now. So you get that positive reinforcement as you keep working. So it's not all or nothing. It's a process. But this is, to me, this area. If you go to a girl that she's 8 years old, and mum's come home from work and she's angry because she's had a hard day at work, and she shouts at her and says, "Oh, I'm just had enough of you. Get to your room." And you go and tap on the girl, and you tap on mum, and mum says, "You know what? I just had a rough day. It wasn't your fault. I'm really sorry. I do love you." And by tapping on the echo and tapping on mum to bring her higher self there, and it naturally comes to this creative completion, this subconscious completion, that mum's giving her a hug now and saying, "I do love you very much." Now, I can't see what's wrong with changing that memory. There's no big repercussions like there is with changing the big T traumas. There's just now a memory that says, "You know what, I am lovable." And then you go to another one. And of course, we've got the brilliant ability within Matrix to then ask the echo where to go next. And the echo knows where to take you. It knows the big relevant ones.
That's my favorite. That is my very favorite.
Times, but they seem to know the key events to go to really start to shift that. So, I'm hoping everybody gets to see now, what we're looking at, what we change, what we don't change, but just keep it logical. Think about it yourself. Whenever I do a session, I think afterwards, is that the best way we could have worked with that? Is there something we could have done more? And as I said anyway, that every memory
and hopefully the nice thing,
you've got to go in at least twice. Yeah. So if you've got to go back and do more, great. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, because like what you said before, there's going to be another session, and one of the things I say on my course is like, you see the 1 minute wonders, one session and everything's clear, and one session and everything's clear. That's not real life. I mean, that happens, and that's what you put on the internet, of course, right? But real life is more than one session. It just
absolutely.
It's not. Yeah. Matrix reimprinting is a magic wand, sure, but sometimes you got to wave that magic wand a few times.
Absolutely, sometimes it's your one memory, and we all see that. Simple phobia might be just one memory, 15 minutes, and it's done. Like the one doing EFT. But then again, you might be working with somebody with MS or ME that's been suffering for 15 years, and you're working with them for 6 months, you're working for a year or 2 years even, but they're getting better and better instead of iller and iller. And and you'll be working with a whole lot of stuff, including things like secondary gains and dynamics, family patterns, and this is a complicated area. But I think what Matrix does, it allows us to get down as far as we need to go to really get down to these beliefs. It's so important. Another case that was always a favourite of mine. It was an example with another phobia where it was complicated. That this guy was from Libya, so I always get mixed up between Syria and Libya. He's from Libya. As a young boy, he was sent off to boarding school. Now, we started off with this guy. He was a fear of snakes. Never knew where this fear came from. When we tuned into that feeling of snakes, and we got the energy, and we chased it back, went back to these days in boarding school. He's in the communal baths, and he was also being bullied while he was at boarding school. And a bully had opened the door and threw a little grass snake into the bath. Now, what was interesting was when we went to his echo, the echo wasn't that bothered about the snake at all. But what had happened was he was being bullied. He had no friends there, and he believed that his mother and father had sent him there because they didn't love him anymore. So the snake became symbolic. That's why, over the years he'd done a lot of work with NLP, said the silver method, Sedona method. He'd worked with lots of things. Nothing was touching this phobia. We went in there, the echo picked up the snake, said, "Nice, okay, I'm happy, I can touch it, no problem. It's just this feeling that nobody loves me, I'm on my own." So we asked him what he needed. And it's an important place to go now about resourcing when we bring people in. He wanted to bring his dad in to understand why his dad didn't love him. So we brought his dad into the Matrix. Wasn't there in the memory originally, of course, but we can bring them in. Higher self is there. We're all existing in this Matrix, so we can bring anybody in at any time. Brings his father in. We tap on him a little bit. Then he asks his father, "Dad, why don't you love me?" And his dad said, "We've always loved you very, very much. We sent you here to protect you from Gaddafi." And in that moment, this guy just broke into tears, sobbing his heart out. Everybody in the room watching this was sobbing their heart out as well. It was a highly emotional session. But he just got it in that moment that he was loved. And that was more important. And that lunchtime he went out, and this was, of course, in the UK in Brighton. It was on the seafront. He found a rubber snake. He come back and said, "Luke, fear's gone." But more importantly, it was about this fear.
The love.
So this belief about I'm unlovable. Okay, so the phobia was gone in one session, but that I'm unlovable, now we'd probably have to go to lots of memories to really change that, and that's the difference. And that's what practitioners need to understand, how deep down the rabbit hole do we need to go to change something. But we have the tools with Matrix to do that. I think one thing that comes up a lot as well is about violence in the Matrix, about to get resolution with violence, and whilst I talked about this in the early days, and I can remember cases of people going in and beating people up, I cannot remember the last time I've facilitated a session where we've needed to go to resort to violence. And I do actually purposely try to veer people away if it's looking like they do want to do something of a violent nature. And I think a lot of that is to do with the fact of not just resolving the echo's trauma and let them just do whatever they want to do. When we do tap on that perpetrator, and we're tapping on them not to help them, we're not trying to surrogately help them, we're doing that just to release that higher self.
Right, good.
And when we understand and we get the information, and I'd often do this with just the client and the perpetrator, leave the echo, the younger echo, somewhere safe for that time being. We tapped on the echo and they're safe, and we'd go and talk to that perpetrator. And when you get to understand and you get that forgiveness, and then at times you might bring the perpetrator and the echo together, knowing that it's safe to do that now, and the echo is happy to do that, then we don't need to resort to the violence that might have been more,
And the violence in my experience is more the client and not the echo. And we always have to pay attention to the echo. So, because if we help the echo, then, and we, like you said, tap with the echo, they're okay. Go tap with the perpetrator if they want to talk and the echo's okay with that, whatever, and they talk in the soul space, or, those are my terms, the higher self or what it is. What happens is it gets resolved, and then the client doesn't want to hurt them anymore. And, because it's usually the client, because the kid doesn't The kid doesn't want to. They're in trauma. They don't. That's not what I've, in my experience, seen. It's
Well,
the
a lot of the
client.
time, what we do need to do with the child is self-forgiveness, because, of course, as children, they always think it's their fault. How can a
Yes,
teacher be wrong? How can a parent be wrong? How can even the rapist be wrong? Especially when
exactly,
rapists do things like, they put all the onus on the child. It's their fault. They've made them do this. They're a bad
exactly.
child.
Right.
So yeah, often it is the child needs its own self-forgiveness, and realising that's important.
That's important.
It always reminds me of that wonderful film Good Will Hunting with
Robin Williams.
you,
Isn't it?
you remember there was this great scene where Robin Williams is there and saying to Will that it wasn't your fault, and Will just carries on talking. He says it wasn't your fault. And he carries on talking. He says it wasn't your fault, and he says stop fucking with me, don't do that. And he says it wasn't your fault, and then he just bursts out crying. Will, and yeah, just in that moment when I watched that brilliant film, wasn't it? One of my favourites, and that realisation. Yeah, of course, you always think it was your fault. I think in that case, he was being abused. His foster parents was putting out cigarettes on him, but he still thought it was his fault.
And
So
you can't
hugely
convince.
important.
Your job is, as a practitioner, is not to convince. And that goes to EFT too. Your job is not to convince, because it all happens by itself in the matrix. When you take
Yeah,
them through it, it happens without us even trying. I mean, we as practitioners know where we're going, but we're not pushing it. We
absolutely.
just wait. It happens by itself, and
Yeah,
that's what's the
yeah.
brilliance in matrix.
Just allowing that natural completion, and yeah, it's so special. So yeah, so back to the big T events. We've got one of our wonderful practitioners, one of our wonderful trainers, Ayuka, in Japan, who's with a government project to help people who went through the tsunami. Now, she's not in all these people and making the tsunami not happen. It happened, but each one of them was traumatized.
Yes.
But there could be survivor's guilt. It could be I should have done more, or I couldn't help my family, or endless amounts of different beliefs. That's what she can work with, and of course, first and foremost, resolving the trauma of what happened. So that's what we're looking at with big T traumas. Go afterwards. First thing, get in there, deal with that trauma of the echo. Once the echo is de-traumatized, what's the belief decision made, and then that gives you your direction for what you need to do and change.
Can you just do a brief explanation of what you mean by when you say move through the trauma?
Move through the trauma, as in the event's been completed. Because with traumatic memory, we are stuck in that moment. I'm about to die. That's what we remember subconsciously. So when I'm talking about the tapping facilitates by, tapping allows that release of that energy, and it allows the echo to naturally move through that memory. And that's the difference with previous forms of inner child work. There's a lady from Australia contacted me a few years ago and said, thank you so much for matrix reimprinting. Last year we went on this inner child retreat. It was a residential retreat for 10 days, week 10 days, and we all left extremely traumatized because we'd gone in there, we'd worked with these, inner children, these what we call echoes, but because they weren't resolving the trauma, they're just reliving the events, reassociating with these echoes and getting traumatized.
Yeah.
We said now, being able to some of these memories with matrix stay dissociated, go in, and by tapping on the echo, I'll let these memories complete. So that's fundamental to what we do, isn't it? Allowing that completion, but also completing in a way that changes the negative belief as well.
Exactly.
So big T, small T traumas. The example I always give is small T traumas are a lot more. Yes, there's trauma there, and trauma is obviously subjective. One of my favourite case studies at the moment is a lady recently on a course who actually, it was a small T trauma. It was actually a huge trauma as well. 6 months old, in a basket, in front of the television, big family. She's the youngest child, 12 brothers, sisters, mum and dad, sat around the television. All of a sudden, mum starts screaming and crying. And then the other family members start to cry. And the little baby's there in front of them all thinking, God, what have I done? I've upset everybody. I must be a horrible child. And what had happened was on the television, it was the announcement of Kennedy's assassination. And, I mean, it was hugely traumatic, like 9/11 for many people were traumatized by this event. But in that moment, that little girl takes on this belief, I'm responsible for everybody's happiness, it's all my fault, or whatever the belief is.
And Carl, I think that's important, and Dr. Bob Scare says that is, we call it big T trauma and little T trauma, but anything could be a big T trauma to somebody else depending on their
Yeah,
circumstances. So that's why it's so important to, it's whoever the client is, because your mother can look at you funny in the kitchen, and that could be a big T trauma depending on your degree
absolutely.
of helplessness. So I just wanted to put that in because we have to.
Absolutely. And we tend to say that the small T traumas because they've not got the huge big like car crashes or deaths and muggins but subjectively they're just as traumatic really. Yeah. A girl I worked with a while ago, and the memory was as a little girl she said to Mum, "Where's Daddy?" Said, "Oh, he's out in his shed in his garage doing his thing." So she went toddling off down there. Little girl, 3 years old. She saw all these flashing lights coming out of the window. So excited, she opened the door, and Daddy turned and shouted at her, "Get out of here! It's dangerous!" And all he was doing is just doing some welding and was worried about her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was unusual behaviour for Dad,
Right.
to shout at her. But in that moment, she made the decision the world's a dangerous place, and ended up, 13 years later, developing fibromyalgia, which we all often see associated with the world's a dangerous place, and has been suffering for 10 years because once that memory's there, and also something I've not mentioned, which I mentioned endlessly, is once we've developed that belief, we will create it, we will attract it, we will look for proof of it.
Oh, yeah.
So how we react in any given situation, and we globalise these things. So as we go through our years, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Exactly.
So that you create more and more stress.
Proving our
Eventually,
belief.
of course, the body's going to change, and mental and physical disease as a result.
So, Carl, I could talk to you for hours and have before, but I'd like to make sure that we put these into, individual talks so that people have the opportunity to space them out a little bit. So there's a lot of other stuff, a lot of other questions that I'm sure people would like to know and hear from you. But I'd like to stop soon so that now, and so we can move on to a different subject next time. So is there any closing words that you want to say about this?
On today's no, just please do look out for these videos of the practitioners. They'll be available freely. I think I'll send them out with newsletters and such. They'll be available within the Matrix website. But also with the Matrix website and being a practitioner, just to remind our trainees, some people just do Matrix for self-help, friends, family, and such. But those people who do want to be practitioners, it is essential that you do and complete the practitioner training by registering with the Matrix website.
Yeah, it's required. You have to. It's required to use this.
Since January 2013, it's a requirement. Previous to that, it was the webinars with Sasha. But if you are a Matrix practitioner, please do register because it's important that we all keep up to date and be the best practitioners we can.
Yeah, it changes. It keeps improving. And the great thing about you, Carl, is as things come to light, you shift and the stuff that you've been doing. The difference between the first book and the second book, for instance, is just and this is gonna keep growing. And people come on my courses and they're like, well, that's a little different from the first book. I'm like, did you read the second book? And even the difference there is because you allow it to blossom, and it doesn't, there's still basics, of course, but you allow it to blossom. And I think that only helps us as practitioners to help others. And so I think it's very important that people keep moving on and listen to the things that you find, and you also listen to your trainers and practitioners and clients, and you find ways.
Oh, absolutely. That's key. I've got in excess of 20 great trainers around the world now, and each and every one, like yourself, and I better not start mentioning names. I'll have to go through everybody.
Yes, you will.
but like yourself, Karin, huge amount of experience, which and I do listen to you guys absolutely, and so between that and of course, I've trained the Matrix course now over 100 times around the world. I learn so much from the people who come to study with me. So things will evolve. To me, it's not. Don't we as practitioners well? They think, he's going to keep changing it all the time. No, the basics.
The basics don't change.
The basics, it's even becoming simpler.
Yeah.
It's just how far we can take it, and some of these, understandings like the future work we do, and just the bits around it that just make it more effective, and the understandings we have. I think that's what's changing. That we can all become better practitioners and help our clients more. That's ultimately what it's all about.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for this hour we spent, and we'll look forward to the next one.
Alrighty. Thanks, Karl, so much.
Thank you.